Our sponsor this week is musical artist Militant Me. And here's a preview of their song, Escaping God, featuring the band The Animal in Me. If you like what you're hearing, you can find them here on YouTube at Militant Me.
Welcome to Be Hero Fights. I'm Tom,
I'm Brian.
and we are here to discuss
Or Fuss.
over two hotly debated, highly related topics.
Last week, we had a great fight where we were fighting against what's better for you to play, a video game or any video game style of anything between PC and console.
That's right. We had a special guest on. Thanks, Carson, for showing up. And it was a really almost heated debate. We weren't that angry, but he was quick.
Yes, very much so. He didn't threaten to put you through a table like we've had on other guests, but he definitely was, he was there throwing punches, hitting those body shots like you were trying to do.
Yeah. And he also has a history with MMA a little bit. I don't know if he's done much fighting, but he's done a lot. He knows a lot about it. He and Danilo and I actually all go way back. Anyways, it was a fun debate. You guys should definitely go check that out if you haven't already. Give us some comments, give us some feedback, and let us know what we got right, what we got wrong.
For sure. And it was good having him on. We should totally bring him back. If you guys agree with us, let us know in the comments if you guys thought he did a fantastic job and we should have him back.
Yeah, exactly.
And you guys can always reach out to us to ask us any questions, give us ideas for new episodes, or if you want to be a fighter or a judge, hit us up on our social medias such as
Facebook.com/BeHeroMedia, as well as Instagram.com/BeHeroMedia.
On our Twitter at BeHeroFights. And of course, you can always find everything that's Be Hero on BeHeroMedia.com.
Exactly. Yeah, so definitely hit us up. And, if you have any ideas for shows, if you want to be involved, we'd love to have you.
That's right. So at the moment, we've already read through a majority of our comments and everything, so we're going to skip over that part. But please, if you want to be featured on here, totally hit us up in the comments on any of those, and we will go ahead and read what you have to say, depending on what it is. And you can be featured on here as well. So
yeah.
All right.
Yeah, it's a good way to do it. So this week, we've actually got a pretty awesome fight for you guys.
It's a very metal fight.
Yes, exactly. Woo! Those of you that have followed us a little bit should know by now that, musician, was in a band for the better part of a decade playing metal, actually. So we have a special guest with us today, and he and I go way back to that band. Not even just metal, though. In fact, when we first started playing together, it was very Simple Planny, very pop punky. Both of us are embarrassed to be admitting to any of this to you, but we had one hell of a MySpace page, I'll tell you that.
Didn't we all? I had a MySpace page for my wrestling stuff way back when.
Hell yeah. So welcome Chandler from the awesome music project, band Militant Me.
Well, thanks for having me, guys. Brian, Tom, it's great to be here.
Thanks for joining us, man. Tell us a little bit about Militant Me and everything that's going on with you right now.
So Militant Me is it's just a solo project. It's just me, and like Tom said, we've been in music for a long time, kind of on again, off again sort of thing.
Yeah.
But gosh, we started the first band together back when we were 15, 16, something like that. And if I could sum the whole thing up in one sentence, it would be feelings, all of the feelings, all of the time. It was very,
Yes,
very
all
much,
of the
very
full
much
the
an
full
ego.
gambit.
Yeah.
Um, anyway, so the concept for Militant Me came from, I joined the military when I was 18, and that's kind of where our emo band, sort of split ways. Went to Iraq, was gone for quite some time, came back, and we started our metal project together. But then that ended up falling apart, probably around like 2014-ish, somewhere around there. And then I got back on active duty. I've been on active duty for about 5 years now. And the love I have for music has just never gone away. So about 2 years ago, I was like, dude, like I'm just gonna get back in it, and got a lot more heavy into the internet's side of like branding and marketing and using social media to kind of like put myself out there. I wanted an image, and I was like, well, I want it to be natural. I want it to be part of who I am. So the concept of Militant Me is like, I've been in the Marine Corps for 13 years, and I've been in music for even longer, and like it kind of, I guess, summarizes who I am as a person in terms of the metal and music and military lifestyle. So,
Right on. Well,
Yeah.
first off, thank you for your service.
well, thank you, man.
And that's just amazing, man. And for everyone watching on YouTube, we actually featured one of his songs right at the beginning of this episode. So go ahead and hit up on his YouTube page and listen to everything he's got on there. Real quick, throw out your deets for your YouTube and stuff.
And all your social medias.
So yeah, YouTube, just look up Militant Me on YouTube, Spotify, Instagram, Twitter. I've even got a TikTok because you got to keep up with the kids these days.
But do you
but
have
yeah,
an OnlyFans?
I haven't hit that one yet. I don't know if I ever will. But they never did anything, right?
Right.
But yeah, so just look up Militant Me. You'll find it anywhere you go. So the nerd with the gas mask on.
Right on. Right
Awesome.
on.
Yeah, and one of the cool things, and this dates back to our early days doing music, is it's self-made. Like we always produced our own stuff, and
Always.
yeah, and for like our craft got better by the end of our metal days. Like it was really good quality, and like it's even better now. So like it's actually been really inspiring being able to see your music videos, see the stuff, and listen to the stuff that you've been producing, and just like see how much further you've been able to take that. Like that to me is really cool. Even though I'm not like a part of it anymore, and we're 1,000 miles away from each other, it's still really inspiring to see how you've been able to carry on. So props to
Thanks,
you.
man. I appreciate that.
All right, guys. So you all know how this goes with how we're going to fight. Chandler, I'm not sure if you had a chance to listen to us yet. But what we do is we have two fighters go through a debate. So we start off with your initial tirade, and then you will argue against each other's points, and then we'll have a final thoughts. In this scenario, largely because I enjoy metal, but I am not as knowledgeable about metal as Tom is, we will have you and Tom fight against each other. So Chandler, being our guest, who do you want to fight on?
So we're talking Metallica versus Slayer. And
Yep.
for me, I feel like there's only one way you resolve that fight, and it's with Metallica standing victorious above the bloodied and mangled corpses of Slayer sitting beneath.
Well, no pun meant, actually totally meant, but, there's only going to be one.
There can only be one. And that one will, in fact, be Slayer slaying Metallica with the ranks of death metal and thrash metal behind them all the way.
We'll see.
Yeah, definitely have to see if Chandler wins out or if Tom is Unforgiven. I'm gonna see how many of these
Nice.
I'm gonna see how many Metallica puns I can get into this episode.
There may be some raining blood.
Or riding of the lightning.
Yes.
Well, you can count at the end. It's all just going to fade to black.
That's right.
Watch out for the angel of death, though.
Ooh.
Just know by the time this episode's over, you might make Tom pretty sane anger.
Dad jokes for days.
Oh yeah,
I think both bands are going to sue us by the end of this. How
free
dare.
advertising. It's how we're playing their music. So, all right, so let's go ahead and get this started. Chandler, let's go ahead and start with you and let you start off with your tirade.
Okay, so here's the thing about Metallica. Like, Metallica is fully aware of what I would call the entire music picture. They started out as a very, thrash kind of raw band, and they were able to bring the entire metal spectrum and all that it encapsulates into the mainstream and actually bring the world together. Like Metallica isn't just some other band that's, you know, some sort of subculture knows about and loves about. Metallica has made metal a culture of its own and has really driven a worldwide movement. I think about back in like, I saw them live for the first time in 2017 at a Philadelphia Eagles stadium in Philly. And I had a captain from a South Korean reconnaissance unit that was with me. You know, barely spoke any English, but I can tell you the English he did know were all of the lyrics to all of Metallica's songs. And he was just singing them at the top of his lungs. And I thought, man, I don't know if there's another band in the history of the world that's ever accomplished anything quite like this. Like so from everything from the side of like the super underground, grungy thrash metal, you know, where it's just like gut busting and, you know, makes your mom kind of cringe, all the way to like really nice songs like Nothing Else Matters that your mom can actually really enjoy. They sort of give like the whole concept. And something I like about them is they didn't let any particular segment of their fan base ever pin them in a corner like I think some of the other like thrash bands really did. So they just kind of did whatever they want and they rolled with it and became the most successful metal band in history.
Definitely.
Yeah, I'm definitely not going to argue with them being the most successful metal band in history. But let's kind of compare apples to apples here a little bit. So Slayer and Metallica both started around the same time. Both started in 1981. They are two of the four heavy hitters for metal. You had Slayer, Metallica, Megadeth, and Anthrax that all started as thrash metal. Definitely Metallica. Yes, definitely Metallica and Slayer, I would say, are the godfathers of modern metal. I think Metallica they were really good at making it marketable. So I have to give them that because you just don't hear Slayer on the radio, but Metallica was all over the radio. Well, maybe not anymore because all anyone cares about now is Imagine Dragons. There's no more rock stations anymore, unfortunately.
Utah's own Imagine Dragons, by the way.
That is true.
That's right.
But I guess because of that, like, yes, they're going to be a lot more known. They're very successful, and in no way am I saying that they're not good, because I absolutely love and adore Metallica. But Slayer, I would dare say, is a more inspirational band for music that I like, and I would even say for music that you play, Chandler. This is a quote that I found. It was in an MTV magazine. So it says, Slayer is one of the most influential bands in heavy metal history. Steve Huey of AllMusic believes the musical style of Slayer makes the band stronger than the other members of the big four thrash metal bands, Slayer, Metallica, Megadeth, and Anthrax, all of which rose to fame during the 1980s. Slayer's down-tuned rhythms, infectious guitar licks, graphically violent lyrics, and grisly artwork set the standard for dozens of emerging thrash bands, and their music was directly responsible for the rise of death metal, states MTV, ranking Slayer as the 6th greatest metal band of all time, ranking number 50 on VH1's 100 Greatest Artists of Hard Rock. I think, like, the thing about Slayer is they created the underground of rock music. Metallica was on stage with Guns N' Roses. They were, like, even though they were thrash, they were still up there with the titans of hair metal back in the day, and so they were definitely a lot more marketable, whereas Slayer found their niche in underground and inspired people like you and me, people like Underoath, a lot of the heavy metal, screamo, pop, even emo, like basically the entire underground scene really calls back to Slayer. Slayer didn't try to make themselves marketable. They were violent on purpose. Maybe not as violent as, say, Gwar.
I was hoping that was going to work its way into the conversation.
Right.
We always try to bring up Gwar.
Surprisingly a lot, actually.
Yeah, I think they've come up on every episode for like the last, I don't know, 4 or 5 episodes.
Something like that.
I think War has made its way into just about every conversation you and I have ever had, Tommy.
Yeah, you're not wrong. But yeah, I would just say that they inspired the underground, which is where I think the best modern metal lives and breathes today.
So yeah, I can't really disagree with like the concept of like the riffs that they create. Because when I think about like if you're comparing like Slayer's riffs to like, you know, just like I don't know, I think of some of the best metalcore bands from, you know, like As I Lay Dying to All That Remains, you know, even like Avenged Sevenfold and whatever. You're talking like the raw, like riffage kind of sound that really like fuels that underground movement. Yeah, I'd say a lot of it probably stems from Slayer. Where I think like the separation really happens is like Slayer kind of like their story sort of ends there. It's like yeah, we feel when we inspire the underground, but it's like if you want, I guess it kind of depends like what you actually want out of metal and music. You know, Metallica kind of made that controversial move from going from like thrash to sort of mainstream when like, I think the kind of turning point for them was when they released like their first like really like soft ballad, you know, Fade to Black, and then you know you had Nothing Else Matters come out on the self-titled that were way more radio friendly. So I think like Slayer probably inspired a lot of like the underground, but like Metallica gave the face and the hope of the idea that like, hey, you can make this a real thing and we can like make real culture out of this to bands that then blew up and became more mainstream later down the road. Like I think you would have like you can owe like Under Oath's first couple of albums, you know, if we want to use that as an example, is like being attributed to Slayer, but like everything from We're Only Chasing Safety on, I think if you're gonna draw inspiration from like we're talking like mainstream Metallica, Black Album and on kind of stuff. In terms of like shaping the hey, we can make cool riffs, but like we can also have a really catchy hook and we can make a song that like people are gonna be humming and singing, you know, for till the end of time and you know, you can play at a party and like everyone can actually like love and understand now. That's not to say anything against like the just raw like riffage and like, you know, evil and heavy sound of everything. Cause for me, I think we kind of need both. But like, I think if you have to say like who did more for a community, like if rock stays entirely in the underground, it eventually kind of dies, which is why, as you kind of brought up, like you don't see a lot of it today. You need mainstream faces and figures to sort of pull that out of the underground and bring it into like a healthy light where it can be reimagined, relived, and you know then retake shape and then continue on. Because if it only ever stays in the underground, I think it eventually dies.
Yeah, I mean, I see what you're saying there. I would say that Metallica is definitely a good entry point. I mean, definitely like growing up, like they were one of the first metal bands that I heard, along with you know it was like Metallica, and then you know I got into Godsmack and System of a Down, you know, and like it was that kind of stuff that really segued me into finding better music. One thing that I think
you start with Enter Sandman and you end at Guar.
Yes. I think that the bands really took a different approach, though. So Metallica is definitely, I would say their music is a lot safer because of you know things like Enter Sandman. Like it's not nearly as politically driven or controversial, and so I think when you look at music, like the artists over history that really shaped not just music but culture as we know it today are the ones that were controversial. Look at Eminem. I don't think we would be nearly where we are without artists like Eminem, even like, you know, on a completely different level, like South Park. Like we wouldn't have the open-mindedness that we have today without people pushing those lines. Slayer started that movement and they never backed down. I remember in high school, the first time like my religious and political views were challenged was by someone that was challenging me with Slayer lyrics and pointing out political flaws in my thinking with Slayer. And like, I mean, I'm sure there's, you know, plenty of people that have done that with plenty of bands, but I can only speak for myself. That was my first time being challenged like that. And I think, I don't think anyone's using like, Metallica that way.
Like Slayer, anytime, you know, I mean, I know they're done and retired, you know, for now, like
as however many times 2018, right?
Yeah,
their last album
like
was
even
15.
to the end, they were still playing it on stage with upside down crosses and basically giving you the big middle finger to the establishment, which like you've got to give them credit for. You know what I mean? Like you've definitely got the shock and awe sort of factor of just like the whoa, like these guys are vile and they're saying something different. But kind of where I sort of split ways is where it's like, while I think that's good to challenge society, I think it's kind of the law of like diminishing returns where it's like it's really good to like sort of shake the perspective. But then like if you're only ever about shaking the perspective and then not doing anything like constructive with it, then it's like then you're just sort of the kid who's just like, you know, you're the little kid to begin with, like shouting at the grown up, you know, for not getting your way, and then you end your life being the old man yelling at the sky because, you know, kids aren't listening to what you're listening now. And I kind of feel like you need that initial like F you, mom and dad, I'm gonna make my own way in life. And then like, you know, you grow up and you're like, okay, well, I also need to like have a more like well-rounded life that be successful and, you know, be happy. And I kind of feel like that's where like Metallica sort of figured it out, where like Slayer just sort of like stayed the same. You know what I mean?
I would dare say though that like, I mean, I definitely see what you're saying, and I actually don't disagree with that. But like, there's definitely something to be said of the people that shook the system until they were done. And I think because of that, we got bands. You know, and I've never met Rage Against the Machine, but they were a very marketable, kind of a funk metal, if you will. That was very much in that same tune of shaking the system, opening people's eyes, and they were as marketable as Metallica. In fact, Rage Against the Machine is one of my favorite bands from growing up. Love that band. You know, even Rise Against, I would say Rise Against, their whole thing is just like challenging the government, you know, stick it to the man, be smart, don't be a sheep. And they're one of the biggest, like, I don't know, I guess pop punk. Like they very much were punk in the beginning, but they're kind of more pop punk now.
Kind of grunge sort of punk sort of.
Yeah.
I don't know really where you put Rise Against. They're sort of their own little
I'd almost
universe.
put them closer to the Ramones though than like Slayer.
Yeah, well, but that's my point. Like they are a completely different genre, but I think that again, that whole like being able to question authority and think for yourself, like that started with bands like Slayer. Yeah. And I like, you know, yeah, Rise Against the Machine, they're very different genres, even from each other, those three. But I think conceptually, you know, we owe a lot of that to Slayer. And like, I would say every band like dreams of being on stage with Metallica, but I don't think anyone, you know, and sure, maybe every band's afraid of Slayer, but I don't think anyone can argue with their influence.
Yeah, I think kind of where I sort of like, I guess, have problems or sort of take, and this isn't necessarily just like Slayer, but sort of like that almost like purist metal sort of community that you get from bands that are influenced by Slayer, is like, it starts out as a very like anti-establishment, like we're just being us and we're doing our own thing. But like, it then quickly morphs into like, you can only rebel in the way we say is okay. Because like, I don't know anyone who's more exclusive and more elitist than like the true purist metal fans, like the dudes who wear like denim jackets with all the patches on it and everything. And, you know, or, like those guys are like, you can only rebel if you rebel the way I say you can rebel. And like, typically that crowd tends to also be like very disconnected from like newer ideas. Like if their ideas were really new and fresh right when they first started, but like, in that same kind of crowd, you've got a lot of homophobic thinking, you've got a lot of like racist thinking, you've got like just a lot of anger that gets like directed towards anyone who's not the exact same as them, which is why like I think it's important to always have that like kind of like culturistic refresh where it's like, all right, we took our initial idea, we brought it to the top, and then we sort of like all came together, we made it a thing that everyone can enjoy, and we brought up people underneath like with us, and let's now hit the reset button and figure out what other ways where we can challenge authority, where Slayer's sort of just like always saying the same thing. You know what I mean?
That does remind me, and this doesn't help my argument, but have you ever heard of Bo Burnham? He's a musical comedian. One of his songs, he talks about like, and I think he's talking about emo kids, but kind of the same concept, like how they all dress and look the same because they don't want to conform.
Right.
So what you were saying, like, yeah,
it's like
we're anti-conformity as we conform to each other. And
exactly.
You're not wrong there. Like that's, And that is one of the frustrating things when you get like an extremist niche in anything really is you're gonna get it's gonna start pushing the brink too much, and then you get like people. I've heard stories about like metal bands in like the UK and like that are like murdering each other, and like people are dying, and like they're taking things too far, and like that is an unfortunate side effect that does happen.
And the funny thing is like I wouldn't even say that's something that like Slayer themselves would ever condone. You know what I mean? I don't know if you ever seen that meme, but it's like Slayer fans, and it's got some like just old angry white guy who looks just pissed off as hell, and he's in his like jacket, and he's got like the spikes and everything, and he's just like some nothing tattoo, and then it's like the Slayer singer, and it's like just him in his SpongeBob t-shirt, like holding his kid's hands, like going to the store. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, it's like clearly there's a disconnect between like what the fans interpret as like, oh, this is what we're supposed to be, where it's like this. I think Slayer themselves were more like, yeah, no, stick it to the man, but then like let's move on and find the next way to stick it to the man, and like it's not just about being angry just for the sake of being angry. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So there was one point that you made about Metallica, and how your captain, sergeant, or whatever from overseas only knew their lyrics. I didn't know English, but he knew all the lyrics of Metallica, and you kind of attributed that to something that's really unique to them. I can tell you that is absolutely not unique to them. Overseas, like ironically, even though like metal is definitely an American creation, it is much bigger overseas than it is anywhere else. So I remember watching like
in Sweden and Norway, and
like, kings of death metal over there.
Yeah, I mean, like I remember watching like interviews with like Aaron Gillespie from Under Oath, or like Silverstein, that band and everything, and how they were blown away that when they would go to like Germany, for example, everyone knew the lyrics to all their songs. And on the inverse, back in would have been 2019, February 2019. It was the last concert I went to. It was actually August Burns Red, Fit for a King, Miss May I, and then there was some band I'd never heard of them, but they were from Japan.
I'm jealous.
It was freaking incredible. In fact, that's probably one of the best shows I've ever been to. But there was this band from Japan, heavy metal band. They were pretty awesome. All their lyrics obviously were Japanese. I didn't know anything, but at least half the crowd knew the Japanese lyrics to this metal band. So like when you start getting a following, like you have a good style, like even if they don't understand what they're saying, like people are going to sing along. So like I can't give Metallica credit for that, just because even this small band with maybe 100,000-200,000 followers, social media followers, like even they got that coming to America.
Before you guys go on.
So they're definitely not like, I guess, unique in that sense, but I would say they're probably the most proliferated in that sense. Like they probably own that space more than anybody, because especially like in today's world, where, like the access to the internet and the ability to just like, share music and like everything's international. Like, for example, you brought up Japan, and so I just finished recording a song with this band called Crystal Lake, and they're from Japan. But they're super heavy, super metalcore. Like if you check them out, you'll love them. But I just did a song with their vocalist, and like they've got they're from Japan. They've got a bigger following in Japan than the United States. But I think like Metallica was able to crack, like they've been that way since like the late 1980s, early 1990s, and like back when people had to like mail each other like cassettes and exchange CDs to share music, and you couldn't just like share stuff over the internet over your phone. It was super easy to like gain and garner a international crowd. Like Metallica broke into that space super early, and it's, I mean, like you can buy Metallica shirts at Walmart, you know what I mean? Like when I think of like what Metallica has done for metal music in terms of like its recognition, like there's probably people out there who think Metallica is like a brand and not actually a band. You know what I mean?
And I say boo on those people.
Right?
Yeah. I know there's like two ways to take that. There's like, oh, well, a bunch of sellouts at F them. But it's also like, dude, like how huge is that they've managed to like infiltrate mainstream culture with like metal?
We
You know what I mean?
we don't
So-
believe in the term sellouts here. I went on a tirade on that 2 or 3 episodes ago. I don't know,
Yeah,
something
on our
like
wrestling episode.
that.
Okay. I don't either. Like for me, you know, like it's like I know like people hate on what Kylie Jenner for wearing the Slayer shirt, and for me, I'm like, dude, that's awesome. Like,
Yeah.
even if she doesn't know who they are, like that is great marketing for the band. Like people are gonna be like, what's Slayer? You know,
Like, oh,
I'm
you're
all
mad that someone made a career out of what they love doing? Oh, you poor
I know.
thing.
Like, isn't that
That's
the
what-
purpose? That's the whole point, right?
yeah.
We're trying to do the same thing with podcasting.
Yeah.
Exactly.
What a
Yeah,
horrible sin.
All right, guys. 2 things real quick. So we're going to jump into final thoughts and get that going. But before we do that, how did you 2 gloss over the concept of a J metal band? I'm really intrigued to seeing what a J metal band looks like.
It's actually really badass. They put on a hell of a show.
Yeah?
Yeah. I kid you not. That was probably easily the best concert I went to. It was the first time in like 10 years that I'd been crowd surfing. It was the most intense wall of death. In fact,
Yeah.
I got to tell this story. So August Burns Red, if you haven't heard them, check them out. They're just incredible. They are so in sync with the audience that like, I've been to many shows and seen many a wall of death, and it's usually like, all right, half you guys over here and half you guys over here, and we're going to do a countdown, and it's going to blah, 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 blah. No, he just looked at the audience and he just put his 2 fingers together and just went like this. It was like fucking Moses parting the Red Sea, man.
Oh man.
Just people just parted, and it was right before a big breakdown, and as soon as that hit, everyone rushed, and I was at the front line throwing fists. Like, it was incredible.
That
Well-
sounds amazing.
You know, going back to the J metal band, all I can imagine, and that does sound awesome, but all I can imagine is, and I don't know their genders, of course, but all I can imagine is a bunch of kabuki looking people, like wearing kabuki outfits with spikes on their shoulders. That's my image for a J metal band.
Oh, goodness. Oh, by the way, August Burns Red, that's the shirt I'm wearing right now. In case you guys didn't see it, I'm a huge
There you go.
fan.
And August Burns Red, because we know you watch this. We would happily be wanting to sponsor some music videos or anything that you like to do. Just hit us up on our Facebook page or hit us up at BeHeroMedia.com.
Exactly. You want to be on our show? We would love to have you.
All right, guys.
All right.
So let's do final thoughts. So, Chandler, tell us one last time, why Metallica over Slayer?
So Metallica Vs Slayer, again, just because they represent like the whole band concept. They started out in like the underground scene, you know, and they may have not as been like edgy as Slayer was, but like they were able to take the underground to the mainstream and really impact culture. And like they weren't afraid to change their music style. They didn't, like, their fans didn't put them in a box. Whereas like I feel like Slayer has, like, they started the box and the box was awesome, but then they just got cornered in that box. And I think over time that box became toxic.
Okay.
So yeah.
Tom?
All right. So final thoughts. I definitely can't argue with what you're saying about Metallica there. You know, I'm never going to knock a band for being able to progress and change their style and evolve with the times and to be able to continue to put out stuff that is, you know, that they are proud of and is also entertaining. It's really common, especially in the music industry, for people to either like stick too much to like them entertaining themselves and not the audience, or too much the audience and not themselves. And so like, and you know, when either one of those happens, like either the audience leaves or the band dies. Like that's really common. So I definitely can't knock Metallica for being able to be so progressive that way in their evolution of music. But again, that's just a completely different methodology, you know, like even Beastie Boys, they're another one from the early, actually, I think they started in 79. I think they started before both of these bands.
They're old.
Yeah, they've been around forever, but they actually started as I want to say that they were a metal band as well in the very beginning, and they evolved.
They definitely weren't like rap, hip hop kind of stuff.
Yeah,
That's for
they
sure.
evolved a lot over time. I digress though, but again, that's a different methodology, and so it like with what Slayer did, with how they accomplished it, with how they were able to maintain that consistency for almost 40 years, over, you know, like 15 or 16 albums. They've got a platinum album. They've got at least 6 gold albums. They've got dozens of singles, despite not being like really publicly accessible, despite not being like really marketable on the radio and everything. They still pushed and became a huge, unstoppable phenomenon. And I think that's really impressive, to be able to create that following. And yes, like there are negatives that came from it, but to be able to create that, they are a self-made band. They funded their first few albums themselves. And like that's incredible. Like, that's what I'm doing right now. That's what you and I always did. That's what you're still doing. Like, that to me is impressive, to be able to create that in a time with no social media and with relatively no radio presence, for them to be able to work the system, work the crowds, work the country to gain that success and following. That to me is incredible.
All right, guys. Well, wow, what a great debate this has been, and this is super close. To start off with, I want you all to go and put in the comments your thoughts now before I jump into mine, because this is insanely close. I very much liked, Chandler, how you mentioned that, outside of being world famous, they were world famous back in the day where being world famous really meant something, and you didn't have YouTube and other things to have to push that. And, Tom, I liked how you brought up how influential Slayer has been in the underground and created the underground. I'm kind of sad for both of you. One, bringing up the underground, talking about how they were kind of the first, where you had people like the Ramones and the New York Dolls who were in the late 70s doing the same thing before Slayer did. And Chandler, you had the great win if you would have mentioned that Metallica is the only band ever to hold a concert in Antarctica. So
every continent.
Every continent. They have covered everything. But with that being said, I think I'm going to have to give it to Metallica. Honestly, for the sheer fact of being not so well known that, like, my daughter walks up to a shirt at Walmart and knows who Metallica is. If she saw Slayer, she'd probably think it was a video game cover. So
shut up. This is bullcrap. Audience, Slayer fans of the world,
and don't get me wrong,
rise to the occasion.
I enjoyed both bands, but I have never busted out my bass and tried to play a riff from Slayer. But I have.
That's because you can't.
I know, but I have for nothing else matters. So yeah, it's gonna be Metallica. But it was so close. Like I often say it's close, and I'm giving it mostly just for the love of Tom. But this one was about as close as it's ever been, honestly, for me judging. Because it was super close. But yeah, it's Metallica. Metallica for the win.
Yeah. I mean, I
Brian,
can't.
all you got
the
to do is
results.
say I win, and nothing else matters.
Nice.
Oh, return of the puns.
You will be unforgiven.
You'll be unforgiven too.
Touche. I can't argue with those results. I mean, I will admit, like, personally, I do prefer Metallica. They are easier for me to listen to. I'm definitely not, like, even though I'm not very religious, I'm very agnostic. Like, I'm still not like Antichrist, I guess. Like, I'm definitely not that in your face, and I definitely don't condone violence. And I like, to me, like, that was, I think your best argument was those negatives that have spawned from it. And
yeah,
I was hoping you wouldn't bring that up.
I took that into consideration. Like, honestly,
yeah, that's kind of a killer feel.
I took it into consideration about the negatives, but I took it out on the sheer fact that you can't say that a band causes a negative unless they went out of their way to do so. To
promote it, yeah.
Yeah, like, if they were, like, rocking KKK stuff and promoting it, then, yeah, that would have totally been the negative. We probably wouldn't even have had this fight. But you can't expect, someone to listen to your music and expect it to always sound the same way to them as the way you make it. So you can't be punished for somebody taking that music and them
interpreting it
Yeah.
wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I kind of put that one to the side as an argument for that fact, but that, everything else though, this was a great fight. And Chandler, thank you again for joining us. Guys, go to his YouTube
Happy to be here.
page, listen to his music. He's got some great collabs on there, and is hopefully having some more soon. So please, guys, listen to that. Real quick, Chandler, before we jump off, go ahead and give your information one more time.
So yeah, you can find me on Instagram, Spotify, Twitter, TikTok, wherever. Just Militant Me, at Militant Me. You'll find me. So.
And do you have anything big upcoming that they should be looking forward to?
Yeah, so I'm releasing a song at the end of February, beginning of March with Ryu from Crystal Lake. It's called Enemy. This is the first spot I'm announcing the release. Haven't even announced the release on Instagram yet. So
Nice.
You heard it here first.
Bam.
Right on. Well, Chandler, thank you again. And you all know the routine, how we always end this. Chandler, I'm not sure if you do. So we will end this the same way as we always do. We will say, and as always, and you will say, fight on. So, guys, as always,
Fight on.
all right, guys, we'll catch you next week.
Our sponsor this week is musical artist Militant Me. And here's a preview of their song, Escaping God, featuring the band The Animal in Me. If you like what you're hearing, you can find them here on YouTube at Militant Me.